Let us start the session now. We'll be talking in depth about cloud, and this session I would try to make it up as demo as possible. Along with the regular agenda or objective of this course module, we'll be trying to create a user account with any of the cloud service provider. Maybe it could be with the Amazon, AWS, or Google Cloud Platform. Whatever is convenient for us, we'll be creating up an account. And before moving into cloud, we'll be learning about what is the foundation. What was the history of cloud and how was it evolved? And what is a hypervisor? What type of hypervisors available existingly? We'll be applying the same concepts, same methods, techniques, tactics, and practices for procedures and policies, even from the session one. Maybe the security essentials, it applies to the cloud environment as well. Cryptography, very much important, and that obviously makes your cloud secure. So we learn where are the places, what are the ways we'll use cloud cryptography in cloud, the computer network and security. When it comes to cloud, obviously network is so essential. Only then remote user who sits in any place can access the cloud resource. The application level security, data and endpoint security, identity and access management, whatever we came through the previous sessions are foundation, and all the fundamentals and foundations are required for us to understand the essential cloud security and how to make the cloud environment more secure. So we'll be seeing what are the different types of cloud services, what are the cloud models which are offered by the cloud service providers, what are the key characteristics of cloud computing, and what are the security issues normally people face, what are the guidelines and what are the policies. As like we already seen, NIST, which is United States government body, which gives the instructions and suggestions, procedures on various fields, not only cybersecurity, information security, every field it gives. There is also a standardization methodology or procedure which was given by NIST as well. We'll discuss about the Cloud Security Alliance, CSA Star. This is a very important body and important organization in the cloud technology and as well as the security. We'll be seeing the best practices, frameworks, and the cloud security controls in this module. So let me start up the lab. For example, let us start with the demo initially. What a cloud environment would look like and how people can access the resource and how fast a resource can be created. So only then when I explain to you, it might make it easy for you people to understand. Let me open a new browser in new incognito mode. For this demo, I'll be using a Google Cloud Computing. This is one of the leading cloud service provider, and the offer they provide us is infrastructure as a service. We'll be talking about what is infrastructure as a service, what is platform as a service, what is software as a service deeply on the upcoming classes, as I mean, at the same session on the upcoming chapters. By default, there are multiple companies, multiple cloud service providers who offer free credits to ensure that how do you use your their account just to get into the particular provider's infrastructure and just to explore us. Microsoft Azure provides us around $200 free credit. AWS, on the other hand, also provides free credit. We can check it. What are the credits available? Okay, if it's an Indian rupee, it's around 13,300 rupees we can use in the cloud. So there is no special link or special activation link required for us to get the free offer. We can simply make a Google search on free. You can use your existing live Outlook or Outlook account to log in, or you can create a free account and you can make use of the 13,300 as a credit for using the infrastructure. Okay, and one more thing, previously AWS offered free service, not in the mode of 12 months free and always free products. When you log into AWS, it will give you multiple options. Let me try logging in just a minute. I'll show it to you. So once I log into the console, for example, if this is AWS console, not a console, interface. When you log into it, you'll be seeing this option. We need to get into the console first. On the left top, you will be seeing multiple options. These are the services which are comes along with AWS. For the free instance, you can go to EC2, that is Elastic Computing, second version. which helps us create a expandable, elastic resource, which can, based on the demand, the resource will expand or shrink. And also it carries multiple security options. It has a built-in identity and access management, Cognito, the secrets manager, guard duty is also one of the network level defense, Inspector, Amazon, Massey, single sign-on solution they have, EC2, elastic computing, the where I left the directory services, web application firewall and shield artifacts. So, for example, when I get into the EC2, you can see multiple options. What are the options of resources available? The resource which is available are we can create it on the go. So this is how when I click on the EC2 instance, when you click on launch, you'll be seeing an option, free tiers. This is a Amazon Linux free tier, Red Hat free tier, free tier. So when you subscribe for a free, yeah, Elastic Cloud Computing, when you click for a free tier, it's eligible. Previously, there were some offer like credits of $100 or $200, wherein you can use other services as well. Now for the free tier, you can use it monthwise. So this is an other cloud provider, which is a Google Cloud platform, which typically they offer infrastructure as a service. And not only Google Cloud, Amazon, they also have a marketplace where we have predefined infrastructure, which can be readily available and readily deployed on your cloud infrastructure. So when you see that infrastructure softwares, application development, it's around 603 products, application servers, application stacks. For example, when we check into some other subcategory, a LAMP is readily available. A LAMP is nothing but Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. This comes for Windows. You can download it as a package and install it just for a web server solution. It's already available here. Same like SFTP, WordPress, Tomcat, Plusk. So these applications are readily available. So there is no need for you to create an infrastructure, install the operating system, then you can run on it. Instead, you can simply select any one of the desired application and you can select it and you can deploy it and you can use it readily available. So even Google does have a marketplace. There are categories, so multiple APIs it's giving us. It gives us the option to select operating system, virtual machines, which is already configured, WordPress, NX, PHP. So from the readily available softwares, we can deploy and like, use it. So let us see how easy for us to create a virtual machine. For example, I just need to click create an instance. So I need to define the name, Edureka. So it's also important for us to select the region of the data center because any cloud provider will have service in multiple location. Not only India, not only Asia, they might have multiple data centers located in multiple geological region. And one more important factor why we need to select the data center is depending on the compliance and also the law regulation. When you take the countries from European Union who use cloud service, they have a restriction, and even American companies who go for a cloud solution, they have restrictions that the data belongs to US company or US citizens or US people. Anything related to United States should be reside only inside United States. So the companies cannot use the cloud provider which has a data center on Europe, Asia Pacific, or any other place. The Americans will use only the data centers physically located in America. Same goes to the European Union. The European Union clients obviously are decide to go for the data center which is located in European Union. The law will not let the data move beyond the country or its legislation. So I'm selecting somewhere around, I'll go with Mumbai. So there are under Mumbai, there are three different zones, zone A, B, C. I'll select anything because anything is okay for us. So I can configure, customize CPUs from the single CPU or 3.7 GB or 8 CPU, 30 GB of memory, or you can customize it. If you need two CPU, if it's that's enough for you, you can go with it. Two CPU and 7 GB. That's enough for us. We'll be deploying a default Linux machine. We do have option to choose the images on operating system based. It's common for all the cloud service providers. They will have a separate custom or pre-built images with them. Debian, CentOS. Ubuntu. We also have Windows PC, I mean Windows Server versions, and some of the configuration which is typically for scientific and deep machine learning. The Intel optimized deep machine learning, those will include additional graphic cards and additional resources, which will make you pay more per hour. So for default, we go with the Debian instance. I don't need cloud DPUs. Instead of Debian, I go with Ubuntu. So likewise, you have option to select the images, any image to deploy, or you can custom create images. When you have a virtual box, you can create the virtual box image. You can install any type of OS, any kind of configuration you can. And with the VMware disk, we can create a custom operating system that can be uploaded to Google Cloud and that can be deployed. That may be of any flavor, Mac, Linux, Windows, any flavor. We can create it, customize it on premise, and we can upload it to the Google Cloud and use it or deploy it across the cloud infrastructure. So I go with the Ubuntu. Ubuntu uses a standard 10 gigs of hard disk, and the important thing, I need to ensure that the traffic is getting allowed, because when I not allow the traffic to get into the cloud environment, I'll not able to take a remote. Let me create. I'm using a default Ubuntu version. Debian is the mother of Ubuntu. Both uses the same platform, same kernel, same infrastructure. The only thing, it's similar to CentOS and Red Hat Linux. Debian will be released. Debian will be the most secure and most stable operating system which is available for the customers, and it's open source. So there is no need to pay for the operating system. It can be downloaded and it can be run on any desktops or servers, whatever the customer may be wishing of. On the other hand, Ubuntu is also a secure platform similar to the Debian, but wherein the frequency of the release or frequency of update patches, frequency of the security patches are more frequent in Ubuntu. For example, when you say that every month I'll be receiving 2 updates for an Ubuntu version, and at least one major version or major upgrade happening once in 2 months or once in 3 months, we'll be getting a major fix and major upgrade to Debian once in 3 months or once in 6 months, or when the developers feel that the Debian operating system is completely patched and all the Ubuntu is actually meant for desktop servers and user PC. Ubuntu actually collects the, I mean, telemetry. It collects the information about how the system crashes, what are the system bugs, based on the reporting, not only with the Ubuntu and also the Debian work. The developers will work on it, and once everything is done, when the developers are ready to release the next version, and they feel that the next release is completed with fixing almost all the bugs in it for the next version, they'll be releasing it. This is the simple difference. But both Debian and Ubuntu are same. So let me try to start the Linux computer, which we deployed right now. Here it is. I got the Linux machine up and I took a console of it using the browser. We do have multiple softwares for taking the remote SSH, like Putty. Putty can be used to get connected to the Linux machine to the cloud environment. Actually, I'm using a Linux Edureka, that's the name of the instance, and I'm using Ubuntu. So let me start updating it, updating and upgrading the existing instance, which is available from the kernels are same. You can simply differentiate between the Ubuntu and Debian. Both uses the same kernel, same. But in Ubuntu, you get the much more customization of both uses genome desktop interface and environment. But the customization and additional level of applications, the support of additional applications is much more in Ubuntu. There is a script we need to run. For Ubuntu, we have multiple application packages. Ubuntu is open source. So the trusty updates, these are the flavors. I mean, not the flavors. These are the variants which decides what are the level of softwares or basic packages to be installed along. For example, making minimal installation to the full installation or complete installation. So you can search for what are the packages available here and search it. And you can simply, if you need something, you can install it. I'm using sudo command. I need git. I need git support. apt install git. So the git was already installed. So what are we doing is I need most of the cloud service providers will not have the Parrot security or Linux security, Linux machines available. So I will be also installing a desktop version, Genome Desktop. Instead of getting sudo repeatedly, I'll be installing sudo su. So I'll be elevating myself as a root user. And the Linux is case sensitive. So when you misspell or replace the characters with uppercase or lowercase, there is a possibility of getting the commands wrong. Ubuntu Genome Desktop. So previously we just installed Genome Desktop, but we need to install Genome Shell and Genome. The command is Ubuntu Genome Desktop. There is no such one. Okay, let it start. In the meantime, we'll talk about hypervisor. What actually is a hypervisor? This image seems to be simple. What exactly a hypervisor? What is a typical or traditional computer works like? In traditional computer, what we do, we'll be getting the hardware configured. It's in a rack based servers or a tower based servers or a laptop or even your desktop. What we will be doing, we'll be getting the hardware, and on the hardware, we'll be installing a operating system, which can be a Mac, Linux, or Windows. And over the operating system, we'll be installing the user based applications like MS Word, MS Outlook, MS Paint, Internet Explorer, Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, whatever it may be. Typical desktop will like on the over the hardware, we'll be installing the operating system. Over the operating system, we'll be installing the user based applications. But in a hypervisor, there is a hardware. On top of it, we'll be installing a guest host operating system, and over it there may be hypervisor. Replacing the host operating system, we can directly install a hypervisor on the bare metal, which can hold multiple guest operating systems. For example, in the previous session we tried to install the virtualbox. What exactly virtualbox, VMware, these kind of softwares are called hypervisor. Even Windows comes with the built-in feature called hypervisor, so we can enable it. Let me show it to you how to enable appwiz.cpl. Appwiz.cpl is a shortcut. Go to the add or remove programs in Windows. Okay, it's not letting. Let's start. In meantime, you can all people can try creating an account on any of the variant which you like. Azure, AWS, Google Cloud Platform, no difference in it. You can just test because obviously they all the providers will give at least $50 to $100 a credit. It will be easy for you to use for 1 or 2 days, or when you use properly, you can even use it for months. So we seen what a cloud could be and how it would be. We'll go few slides. In the meantime, I try to set up different computer where I can show you some additional demos on it. What is cloud computing architectural framework? As we all know that cloud computing is a concept which evolved from the basic hypervisor technology, what we use since from around 2000, early 2000s. The concept of getting hypervisor is easy. When we install a custom server, we can run multiple guest operating systems on it. Even our Windows PC can run multiple guest operating system depending on the hardware and the resource we have on the local computer. With the help of freely available VirtualBox, the paid version of VMware, over your existing Windows machine, you can install multiple operating system to configure your lab environment, and you can test it on it. So when you don't have resource on your local computer, you're buying, it's not like buying, you're renting the resource, and you're using it along with it. So this is the framework NIST-SP 800-145. This is the cloud infrastructure model and the procedure of framework which are prescribed by NIST. And there is also one more important people who are working for the security of cloud, that's called the Cloud Security Alliance. And what are the features of cloud computing? The cloud model is composed of 5 essential characteristics. These are the things which we need to remember. 5 essential characteristics and 3 service models and 4 deployment models. we'll learn about what are the characteristics, service models, and the deployment models. So first thing, what is a feature available? Shared internally or with external customer? Because when you purchase a resource, when you purchase a data center or for huge infrastructure, it is not only used by you, but it also shared with other resources. You can also rent it. It is not necessary you need to invest hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars, but you'll be using only a fraction of the resource and remaining are left free or left unused. So in those scenarios, it can be rented out and anybody can be a tenant. And during the contract period, they can use it and they'll pay what they use. That is pay per use. It doesn't mean if you create an account, it doesn't mean you need to pay regularly. You need to use a contract charge or maintenance charge. Nothing exactly like that. Any cloud service provider will bill you only on what you use. If you're using just 1 hour a month, you'll be paying just 1 hour, similar to the pay-per-use concept of any other services. The resources are shared. We can get any type of resource which are available free. When we need additional CPU, we can increase the CPU size. When we need additional RAM, we can increase it. It is simple because initially we created two CPU and 4 GB of RAM. That's enough for us to run Linux machine on cloud infrastructure. But what happens when we install the desktop version of it? For using a desktop version, we need at least some more higher number of RAM. And also, if it's a 4 core CPU, that would be easy for us. What we'll be doing is we'll be just simply shutting down the existing VM instance and we'll be making change, modifying the instance resource. We can increase from 4 PC to 10 PC, or if it's a paid version in Google Cloud instance, you can use up to 96 CPUs for a single instance. This is how you can scale your environment. If you don't have much task to work with other CPUs, you can just bring down, you can use a single instance. I mean, single CPU or 2 GB of RAM, that's enough. You can make the changes in it. And based on the load, we have an option. We might be initially configured server, for example, that's a web server. We can make a traffic. We would be expecting traffic of around 100 people per minute or per hour. To say to an example, I'll be hosting Amazon or Flipkart in my cloud provider. For example, you can expect 100 visitor per minute. So based on it, the existing resource will be allotted, the existing resource will be aligned. And what on the special occasions, it's like Diwali sale, New Year sale, or the great Indian festivals you'll be hearing about. When the flow of the traffic, maybe in a minute, I'll be getting 1,000 customers visiting my web page when comparing to the 100 customers visiting the page previously. For the requirement of the 1,000 customers, we can scale the resource whenever we need. So for a regular use, I just need one computer. For a special occasion, I need 10 more computers. So the resource will be expanded, that can be scaled up only during the phase. And when the traffic becomes normal, the resource will be shrunk down and I'll be using the same one. So it's flexible. And also, instead of you buying the infrastructure, you buying the maintenance, we will be installing and everything. Instead, you just rent it. Whatever you use, you'll pay for it. You don't need the huge investment to be invested on the infrastructure. And when in the rent concept, you'll be paying by month or by a term or whatever. Even you can pay by days or even weeks. That's up to you. It will greatly reduce the capital expenditure when compared to the traditional infrastructure. So this image can show you how typically a traditional environment looks like. This is a remote user and an office user. What they both are doing, even the internal user, the external user, he connects to the router. I mean, he connects to the internet and which is connects back to the enterprise LAN, local area network, and it takes to the data center zone. Even the same user who logs in within the company premise, he'll be connected to the corporate LAN and then he was taken to the data or the application or anything which resides on a corporate LAN. What happens in the cloud? Let's see. Previous example, we see just one enterprise who's trying to access the data and the applications from a cloud service provider. In cloud approach, what happens? Enterprise one, the same thing. The customer who's on premise, who's in the office, connects to the corporate LAN, and he'll be connected to the internet, and internet takes to the cloud service provider. On the same example, the remote user of the local company connects to the cloud resource through the internet and reaches it. But the cloud service provider is just one. On the same time, the enterprise too also have a similar network, and they also purchased or rented service from the cloud service provider, which takes to the same place. There is no difference. The people are connecting to the on-premise or cloud premise. They need to be on the network. They need to be secured, and they need to be provided the proper access to the proper object. This is the standard cloud approach. What are the main categories of services offered by the cloud service provider? So we'll be calling them as a CSPs in short, as a cloud service provider. The first important service which provided by the customer, I mean, CSPs are infrastructure as a service. The infrastructure is like a typical hardware environment which is given to the customer. The overlying operating system and the applications which are lying over the operating system and the network configurations, default basic connectivity between the VM instances and everything will be provided by the infrastructure service provider. But everything else we need to take care of. In infrastructure service, we need to take care of the operating system level patching, and we need to take care of the application level patching. We need to take care of the maintenance as how we do in the regular on-premise infrastructure. But in the platform as a service, we have an option. Infrastructure services examples are AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. These are the few common, I mean, well-known CSPs. Platform as a service, on the other hand, we can get the instances or get the resource configured along with the networking and operating system on it. We can run the custom applications or custom services over it. What the difference between the infrastructure and platform as a service? Infrastructure is basically hardware oriented, maximum of hardware stuff which can be availed. But in platform, we'll be getting also the network level support and as well as the operating system over it. Windows Azure, Beanstalk, Force.com. These are the few examples of it. On the other hand, software as a service is completely your underlying hardware infrastructure, the operating system level, the patches, the network connectivity, everything that will be taken care. The cloud app, what is software as a service? For example, you are using Office 365 or Gmail, Salesforce, your Workday, Concur, whatever we call Box.com. So these are the web applications available on the cloud that can be used. Even the software level patching will be done by the provider. We won't be updating the script or we won't be updating anything. For example, when we rent a WordPress service, just we'll be deploying the WordPress software, and the underlying maintenance and upgradation or any changes or anything has to be done for the software level. That will be done by the provider. So we don't have the headache of doing it. So these are the three major categories of cloud service model. And still we have some few more. Network as a service, like data as a service. We can just store data on the, or we can use a database server as a service. The identity and access management as a service. The identity and access management service that was now taken care by the cloud access security brokers. Cloud access security brokers are plays an important role in cloud security, because when we already think about the or know about the shadow IT, shadow IT need to draw a diagram that can help you to understand. Just a minute. For example, we take a diagram. This region is called as sanctioned. So this is unsanctioned. This is a zone where the shadow IT actually comes in. For regularly available softwares, what you can call Box, O365, Salesforce, Facebook, etc. These might be the sanction application which is available by the company. But what happens when other softwares which are used by your employees? There might be a special something or application which was created by himself, which is running on his mobile phone, or it may be anything from LinkedIn. So in the middle, sometimes company may offer even these data can be taken here. When people are allowed to use the Twitter, I mean Twitter company's Twitter handle alone, they can use it. This is the sanctioned IT region where the things are getting monitored and everything will be observed. People may have the control over it. But wherein the unsanctioned approved, the client can use the company credential or Office 365 credential to log into Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn, etc. For example, that cannot be monitored, that cannot be assessed. What are the data the customer is using and what are the files which are getting uploaded and downloaded. And in between, there is a shadow IT which has a partial knowledge of what the employee does and partial knowledge of what employee does not. So this is a combination between the region, the gray region where the sanctioned apps and unsanctioned apps between. So just to overcome it, there is a important thing which is called Cloud Access Service Broker, or simply CASBs. These comes into play when users connect our mobile devices, computers, or anything. I'm just making some graph just to name it as user computers, remote users. When the user tries to communicate, connect, because cloud access service brokers are the interface between your organization and your cloud service providers. And only through the cloud service brokers, the employees or anyone from your end are able to connect to the secure zone. Only this can make a secure green connection between your sanctioned or unsanctioned ITs, whatever it may be. The cloud access service brokers may be of three types. They can be APIs. Mostly nowadays, the CASBs are API based. They can directly interact with the cloud APIs. AWS API, Azure API, Google Cloud API, or sometimes they can be installed on the on-premise as a gateway kind of proxy. Through the CASB proxy, users should be connecting to the cloud service providers, or it can be installed on the local host, because host base is an olden pattern, and nowadays we cannot see much of the host based installation. Everything is API based or a proxy based. That's agentless. We moving into the next generation. So this will monitor each and every transaction. When a particular service needs to be provided to the customer, it calls to the cloud API, it talks to it, and it will get the proper access. CASBs also take care of the identity and access management to be added. It verify the user authenticity and authorization account, and it gets the right resource to him. And also the CASBs are giving some visibility over the action what users performing over the cloud. It also, when it comes to the cloud service provider, we will not have the control over the environment, I mean completely. We won't have the complete ownership of it. So we don't see what kind of malwares or any threats which comes in. But when the traffic through the CASBs, we have the visibility and we have the detection capabilities. One more important thing, we can log. Log is an important source of enterprise. Whatever transaction happens, that will be recorded. These CASBs will help us in getting the logs and monitoring for the periodic review. So it helps us more in getting on the right track on the cloud platform. So four different deployment method. What are the deployment methods? People are from a single community, full, residing in a single region, single place. They wanted to build a common place. I mean, a temple, a church, or mosque, whatever it may be. They will have the funded, collected, and they will build a common place for them. For all the people who are residing on the local region, use the particular building or particular resource. Similarly, community-based one is collection. I mean, it is not only for a operated a single ownership. It is a multiple tenants or multiple owners of it. They'll collaborate and build up a cloud environment, which can be used by themselves, and also they can be renting it to others. The private cloud is completely personal and it is owned by a single entity, and it is used only for its own business. And the public cloud is nothing but the general public cloud which are available by the cloud service providers. So you can buy it, you can rent it, you can use it, and whenever you don't need, you can just dispose it. Hybrid cloud is nothing but a combination of any of these three. You can have a private and public cloud combination, or public and community cloud based combination, or anything it may be. This is a combination of multiple cloud models, deployment models. What are the characteristics of a cloud computing model? A multi-tenancy and resource pooling. What is multi-tenancy? Your resource will not be wasted when you have multiple tenants, multiple people renting your resource. And the remaining resource, wherever, if you have a data center one and data center two, your data center one is 80% full, and your data center two is just 20% full. You can allocate the resource partially, the 10%, or you can utilize the 10% and 10% as a buffer on the data center one, and you can utilize the other resource from data center two. You can mix match it, or you can pool the resource. Wherever you can find the free resource, you can offer it. And it's an on demand service. There is no need for you to wait in a queue. Whenever you need, you can just get the service up and running for you. If you want to scale up your environment, you can do it in minutes. If you want to scale down your environment, that can be also done on demand whenever and wherever you require. Broad access network, any provider will have multiple data centers which would be close to you or which would be far from you, but somehow cheaper than you. That is up to you to decide which kind of data center to use it. And any cloud service provider will have a high reliability and high redundant network. So the communication will be always up. And most of the cloud service providers will guarantee you uptime of 99.9%. Wherever you see the 99.9% uptime is guaranteed by most of the providers. As we already spoke about rapid elasticity, so whenever you need, you can scale your resource, or whenever you don't need, you can shrink your resource. You can measure it, what you use, and what are the resources are using, and what actually need to be used. You can actually count on how much you use. So these are the simple diagram which gives you the same topics which we covered: the deployment models, four deployment models, three service models, and five essential characteristics of cloud. Visually, it's a summary of it: public cloud, private cloud, hybrid cloud, and community cloud. These are the deployment models. Service models: software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service. That's three. Resource pooling: the resource will be shared and it's an on demand service. We can measure what we use. Rapid elasticity, broad network. These are the characteristics of cloud. Whatever we talk, any technology, wherever we use, there is always advantages and disadvantages. Let us see the pros. What are the benefits of a cloud computing? So we use it for, as we use pay-per-use model. So the wastage or will be limited. Will not be using the resource when it is not needed. So we'll not be paying it when it's not needed. And the faster time to roll out, because when you need to create a new instance of VM, it will not take much time. You can right away create it, or you can clone the same type of instance to multiple objects, I mean multiple VMs. And the resources which are available is keep rapidly updating. So whenever the new technology which comes in, these cloud security providers will adapt, and they will get the infrastructure up to the current, not only in the hardware wise, in the software wise. So the up to date resource and also the sharing the resource between multiple tenants are more effectively managed by the service provider. It is not our headache to wait for the tenant to vacate few of the resource for us to use. Instead, it will be the resource will be automatically allocated to any other location, I mean any other data center which is free. So reduced cost, reduced operational expense. The capex is nothing but a capital expenditure. Opex is operational expenditure. Lock-in period, interpolability and portability in lock-in period. Lock-in period is important term which we need to discuss. Every cloud service provider will have a contract, will get a contract with the customers, and they will have a certain amount of certain time. Until then, they need a contract. The contract may be of as minimum of 6 months to 1 year, or most of the contract service providers. When you go for a large infrastructure, when you rent it out, typically it's around, they will go for a contract of at least 3 years. So during the lock-in period, you cannot migrate your service from one service provider to other service provider, and it cannot be ported easily. That's called lock-in period. Availability and reliability: people say that my company gives 100% uptime and my service is guaranteed always, but we cannot trust anything always. The information which is given by us could be true or may not be true. Security and privacy concerns: we need to make sure the data or the application, whatever the personal items, the enterprise environment resource which we leave on the cloud service provider, we need to make sure that how secure and how confidentially the data is kept and how secure the data it can be. Another thing, the compliance and regulatory mandates, site ownership. As we discussed before, the European Union data should be reside inside the European Union. American data should be reside inside the American data. But for Indians, we don't have care. We'll be having the office. I mean, we'll be having the data located anywhere. Typically, when we have the data within our geographical location or legislation location, it would be easy for us to identify or track down. And when it's near to our location, the accessible data, I mean, data latency also would be higher. And the three facets of cloud security, we need to talk about management, operations, and technology. These are the three concept main branches we need to work on: management, operations, and technology. So, what are the key questions for adapting to cloud? We need to understand where exactly the data to be residing. how well the data will be protected. What are the security issues I'll be facing when I move the data to cloud, or when I move the my infrastructure to cloud? What exactly would be the exit strategy? Dependencies, any dependencies or lock-in period. So when I go in with the contract for 2 years or at least 6 months, what happens when the service quality is not good and I need to quit the service within 1 or 2 months, for example? So how good the exit policy works? Once I leave the cloud service provider, what is the guarantee that my data will be deleted securely? So instead, few of the scenarios, the data might not be wiped out properly, and you also people heard about system recovery, a data recovery, last data recovery. When the data is not properly wiped off, cloud environment is typically a network storage along with the CPU, RAM, everything in combination. What if when a customer buys rents up infrastructure from you and tries to recover the data which is already existed on the network? It is obviously possible when the data is not wiped properly from the hard drive. There is a possibility of getting the data recovered, which might be sensitive enough. So we need to make sure whether the data is getting wiped properly when once we leave the cloud service provider. And also we need to think whether the existing infrastructure and the technology what we use and how the architecture we have, will it be matching to the one we already have? And is it how easily it can be ported to the cloud or ported back to the on-premise? And also there are few concerns are less control. We don't have much control on the underlying hardware, underlying softwares, and we cannot be sure that how reliable the data and how reliable the service would be. And also the data security, which is a huge concern. There are multiple breaches happening. Even the virtual box, which we talk about, that was got hacked. Virtual box, it's from Oracle. Everyone has an own technology. Same like Amazon, Google, they use a Linux. I mean, they have their own custom platform. What happens when a hacker finds a bug or a vulnerability on the existing infrastructure? When he rents a service from them and he's expert and he knows how to exploit the vulnerability and pass on to the next tenant resource. Obviously, the data could be leaked. The compliance part, as we already know that the HIPAA, PCI DSS, some of the things they need compliance. I mean, the data to be under compliance, and they have a strict regulation on the data law. When it moves to the cloud, we need to make sure that how compliant we are, and also the security management. As like the on-premise, we don't have the much control over security, even from the network level to the application level layer. So those are the concerns which we have when we try to move to the cloud. Cloud security risk analysis. So not only in the cloud, on the on-premise, the first primary duty for us is to identify the assets. What are the highly secure or highly confidential devices or data which are in cloud? And what are the devices we are about to protect? And what properties of the assets must be maintained? On any guidelines or any NIST guidelines, even if you go for a data security, we need to identify or classify the data, what kind of data is, how sensitive it is. Same like in NIST framework or cybersecurity framework, we need to identify the assets. I mean, discover the assets. You need to make sure that what are the assets and data available in your environment so that you can plan accordingly to make a preventive plan or defensive plan or security plan. And identifying the threats. Threat has a larger landscape. It not only limited to desktop environment or server environment, it is spreading across. There was a survey which happened last week. I mean, Gartner published around 58% of malwares are in the mobiles and handheld devices. And also, those 58% are new variants. Every day, the evolution of malwares are rapidly growing. So we need to understand what is the threat vector and what kind of threat actually it can be caused to the infrastructure through cloud. And we need to plan on what are the countermeasures we can take on it. How are the ways we can have it? For example, if you have a WordPress or Joomla hosted on AWS or Azure, what we can do is we can place a web application firewall on front of your website. So any incoming traffic, by default, we all know that a port 80 used by HTTP and 443 used by HTTPS. So other than the regular ports, we might be using different port for some of the administrative logins. So just to ensure, a web application firewall will be much more added defense because the SQL injection can be prevented. Any query parameterization will not be done. The input can be sanitized by the application firewall. So there are much more advantage on how our configuration is. The CIA remains in all vectors. Confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the data and the infrastructure should be always available. The key assets around the cloud is cloud customer data. Whatever data we not only have the customer's data, we have our own data, business data, confidential data, even a payroll information which are in cloud that needs to be safe and secure. We are in a position not only for securing the customer's data, we are in a demand and high need of securing our own data itself on the cloud. Customer applications, sometimes there might be a need. We might be the service provider, but the customer wanted us to use the applications which are provided by them. So we need to make sure that those applications are to be protected and how secure we can handle it. And is there any threat or any kind of attack vector can be created using those applications? For understanding and analyzing in each and every device and every application is utmost important on any environment. It may be from 10 to 15 computers or maybe be 5,000 to 50,000 computers or any size of organization. Having a good inventory of asset and the configuration management database is a primary key to plan the defense. Computing services, number of client endpoints, and what is the database we use, and what is the access information we configure. These are the key points we need to consider. The key threats, we know that the availability and reliability is always an issue. We don't trust the cloud support providers' words. Always we need to have the service up. No time it may be. Around the clock it should be up and running and reliable. And also the services which are provided by them are to be complying to the local and general regulatory laws. Perimeter security model broken. What we call as a perimeter security, we have enterprise level perimeter security. Perimeter is typically called as a network level defense. What we have around the enterprise, only by passing the network level security device, one can get into it, or not by breaking, just by authenticating or providing the right authorization, he can bypass the perimeter device. When moving into the cloud, the concept of perimeter was taken off to be simple, because anyone from any place can connect directly to the environment and he can directly bypass the network or he can access anywhere. The attack by other tenants and the customers, when we rent a house, when we rent an apartment, there would be possibility of getting clash or conflict between your neighbor. Not all the neighbors would be good. The same goes to the tenant concept of cloud. You have a separate environment and you need something separate, but your tenant might be a threat actor who might be trying to breach, who try to bypass, who try to penetrate into your network. And also the inappropriate integration of provider and customer security system. Even as we say before, the operating systems provided by Linux, Windows, Mac, that comes with the default security best practices and security controls. Likewise, the cloud security providers also provide the security concept, the security device services, what we seen earlier. Like there were multiple security services available here under the, when you go for AWS place, identity and access management solution is there, guard duty, web application firewall and shield. There are multiple security appliances they provide for free of cost sometimes, and also depending on the service you offer. So with that proper usage and proper configuration of it, you can obviously get a good and secure environment. So the types of threats and what are the countermeasures we can take off. The cloud sometimes may be less availability or less, it will not be live most time as per it. Then when compared to the on-premise environment, complexity increases chance of failures. The complexity, what we call as a complexity, the infrastructure which we have on the cloud also deals with the network, also need with the underlying hardware, also with the overlying operating system and the application and maintenance and interconnectivity between your each and every virtual machines. Everything is there, but the tools we use, I mean, on traditional environment, we have different set of tools, different set of configuration we make to troubleshoot to fix a existing issue. But when it comes to the cloud, each and every vendor has a separate set of tools and separate set of configurations and separate procedures to fix it. So the understanding each and every technology, and the cloud is slowly gearing up. And to be frank, the cloud tradition which was started long back, I can say it's more than 10 years now. Only recently, after the adaptation of cloud from Azure, AWS, they Google competition, they brought on the price down. AliExpress. There are a lot of the DigitalOcean. Multiple cloud service providers are available. Even they are growing day by day. The clouds are prominent attack targets, so it is easy for us to identify the cloud, what exactly the company is hosted into, what exactly they are into. When the leverage, I mean, there is a lesser defense in the perimeter level. And obviously, it is easy for a tester or intruder to reach into the cloud environment so easily. Internet reliability is a flasky. So, internet reliability. So, you need to have a consistent connection between your cloud service provider and yourself. Only then you have the uninterrupted or reliable connectivity between the resource which you rented. Sharing the resources with multiple tenants or multiple people will also increase the attack vector. These are the common concerns and common threats. So, what are the things we can do to fix it? Evaluate the provider measure to ensure availability. We need to make sure we need to assess. We not only need to assess the infrastructure and inside it, we need to assess the service provider even. Any service provider will obviously have a certificate, or the provider will go on through a continuous audit, IT infrastructure audit, the compliance audit, multiple audits. Whenever you go, they should be getting the certificates for it. So when you see the ISO compliant, CSA compliant, ITAR, HIPAA, IRS, so these are the certificates which are provided to the Microsoft Azure. So likewise, AWS compliance. So globally, the CSA, they also got the certification from CSA, ISO 9001, 27001, 27017, the Criminal Justice Information Services, the Department of Defense Data Processing, Federal RAM. These are the certifications, I mean, for Asia Pacific specific, FISC, IRAP, I mean, multiple complaints. They are complying to multiple. Even Google might have such certificates related to it. We need to ensure that evaluate what are the services provided by the service provider and how genuine it is and how reliable it is. So monitoring availability carefully. So we also have a periodical check, and sometimes the service providers also intimate us. Particular service might be go down for a couple of minutes because the downtime is not long when compared to the on-premise one. We won't have 8 hours, 12 hours, or 24 hours downtime. So even the downtimes will be in minutes. So planning for a downtime activity. I mean, planning for an alternate. So the legal and regulatory issues, the laws and complaints, because these slides gives the repeated information. We know the law, we know the how the law requirement and how the data compliance is to be, and how the data retention stay law has to be. This is same repeating what we already did. So what is a countermeasure? Actually, perimeter based, the castle based. What is a castle? On the castle walls, there are soldier, there are fighters. I mean, there are soldiers who stands in. Typically, we call them as network devices who securing as a castle walls, and inside it we have other technologies, other security factors, other kind of warriors who will be inside it. Typically, the when you breach a castle, obviously the castle door or the castle wall has to be broken. Only then you can breach into the network. Typically, it's changing, so we need to adapt to a model, securing layer in each and every layer, not only based on the enterprise level perimeter wall. We want to implement the security on application layer, the host wise layer, the subnet wise layer, layer by layer. We need to increase the security as per the demand. So what are the other type of threats available? Attacks by other customers. What attacks other customer can have? In cloud service provider might share a resource with the untrusted party. There is also an option for us to opt for data center specifically for us. It can be shared with anyone, even if the data is used or not. We'll be using it. So as per the requirement, some providers even customize for it. We can ask them, I need 100 processors, 100 into 8 gigs of RAM, and similarly 100 into 1 terabyte of hard drives. So I need some customization. I need this kind. Even some CSPs are ready to provide as per the customer's requirement, and that's on the contract. So when we go for a custom infrastructure, obviously the lock-in period will be increased. Usually in a regular disposable or readily available infrastructure, if you go for a standard instance, you can drop off anytime. When your task is over, you can simply complete it in a day or two. If you have 10 number of computers, that will not be a huge task for the CSPs. They can obviously say, okay, you can terminate the service, you can move on. But when we go for our thousands and hundreds of computer or any custom made or customly placed for us, we cannot break the contract and leave from the particular service provider and move on to a different one. This is a major concern. And the CPU storage and network are shared. As we know that the Intel is keep on getting multiple hit due to the side channel vulnerability, due to the processes vulnerability, the data is getting leaked. Any sensitive data which is processed is getting leaked and it can be audited. What happens, for example, if the cloud service provider uses the same old processor and it's not patched and the hypervisor level it is not hardened, the data can be easily obtained by the tenant who's sharing your resource with. So inappropriate integration, it is by the customer, not with the service provider. Because most of the time, people tend to miss something. It is obviously human nature. Misconfiguration or malconfiguration or even not configuring is also a kind of misconfiguration, misintegration between the infrastructure. What are the threats? Discontinued provider and the customer security systems. Disgruntled ex-employee retains access to cloud. Employee is taken off from the company, but he still left access with the cloud. Obviously, he can get into the cloud and he can steal the data, or he can, if he's smart enough, he can do anything with the access. And the security incident in the cloud not reported to the customer. If there is any security incident or security breach, it is identified by this cloud service provider and is not informed to the customer. That is also one of the threat which impose to the greater risk to the environment. What are the countermeasure we can take? We can integrate the identity and access management centrally across the cloud access, enforce consistent access control rules, integrate detection, monitoring, and alerting, as like the regular on-premise. May consider using the SAML, LDAP, Radius, XASML, IFMAP, etc. as a protocol, authentication protocols we can use. The key strategic and tactical security concerns, Cloud Security Alliance. We spoke about the Cloud Security Alliance. Cloud Security Alliance, what they came, we take this first. When you go for anything related to cybersecurity or cloud security, everything is would be like a questionnaire. I'll show you how the CSA guide V3 looks like. So this is how the actual questionnaire looks like. Cloud Control Matrix version 3. What it talks about, the control domain and cloud control matrix, identification number it is, control specification, what is the control actually is, application and infrastructure security. And the code is AIS-01. Application and interface API shall be designed, developed, and deployed in accordance to industry acceptance standards, example OWASP for web application, and adhere to applicable legal, statutory, or regulatory compliance obligation. So this is the purpose of it. This is the simple description of what the control is. And we need to ensure whether it's applicable for network, compute, storage, app, or data. Architectural review. So we'll be just marking it how it would be. And it not only speaks about the but itself, it also share the same thing which was prescribed by BITS, BIS Germany, CCM V1, COBIT, CSA guidelines. In its federal risk assessment, GAPP, it has the collection of multiple compliance points and procedures. You see the PCI DSS, NIST compliance government. It's equivalent to AIS 0-1, AIS-01 is equivalent to these many same set of procedures from other security bodies. So this is like a questionnaire we need to ensure, take care of before integrating or developing a deployment structure. So the CSA Cloud Security Alliance Guide V3, what it says, what are the governance and enterprise risk management concept is, and interoperability and portability, application security, encryption key management, data center operations, the compliance and audit management, and what is the legal requirement for it, what is the virtualization factor we need. Sometimes customers might need multiple virtual machines. They might be offering as like the real environment. They want to install a VMware. They need to deploy multiple hosts. So how the nested virtualization works on it, identity and access management, security and as a service. These are the concepts and topics which are covered in the CSA guide V3.0. Governance risk and enterprise risk management. What are the concerns we have? It is to understand our capability of an enterprise to govern, measure enterprise risk introduced by the cloud computing. So we need to measure the risk which are introduced to the traditional environment after adapting to the cloud technology. what are the legal issue, and also the due diligence to be taken care. The risk assessment of the cloud provider, not for us providing the assessment, I mean conducting a risk assessment of the cloud provider. Before we decide to move on to any cloud security provider, we can always have a chat or support. We can talk to the provider and ask for the compliant metrics, in what are the ways they are compliant, whether they are matching the requirement for us, if something is needed, whether they can be provided in some time. We can always talk on to the people. Over the web there are few highly accredited credentials or highly accredited certifications are published on the CSP's websites. But if you need more, you can always talk to the support of them, and you can get the appropriate information from them. So cross-border data flow versus risk. So the borders, when the data moves between your border of a country or geographical border, what kind of risk is involved, and the responsibility of data protection in case of breach are the concerns related to the governance and enterprise risk management team. So, what are the key recommendations which is provided by the CSP? In-depth risk assessment and pre-contractual security due diligence. Due diligence is a term which is called verification or background check, similar to the physical world. We need to check whether the cloud security provider is apt or is he complying to all the requirements. It's up to us to assess the risk and decide whether to move on with this cloud security provider, and also to check with the contract agreements to ensure that the necessary information security and other subcontract chains are in place. And also it's our duty to monitor the key risk and performance metrics of the service provider. Previously, periodically we can get the statistics. It is readily available. Every cloud service provider will have it. Even everyone knows that Google Cloud Platform on AWS had data breach and there was a vulnerability, there were downtime. It is nowhere guaranteed that the Azure or AWS or any other cloud service provider are 100% safe and they can be assuring the data will be secure all the time. We can verify periodically when was the breach happened, what was the impact of the breach, and what was the financial loss of the breach. We can understand and identify, and if we need, we can talk to the service provider and ask what was the remediation step you took and what was the mitigation steps you put in place to make sure that the same kind of breach will not happen in future. This is up to us to decide and check before choosing a service provider. Legal issue, just making the privacy and guidelines and regulatory laws and the things has to be in place. The contract agreement, I mean, the before signing up a contract or making with a contract, reading up the requirements and also the service level agreement. Security due diligence of CSP is a key. So perform a background check, perform a complete study of the cloud security provider. That is the key for us to have a secure environment in future. So the compliance and auditing part, we need to maintain and provide compliance with various compliance requirement, not only the legislation wise, the regulatory wise, and also the cloud computing wise, depending on the region where we operate and where we work, and also the what type of data from which location we get. We need to include all the other laws as well. So as like the on-premise environment, we need to periodically audit, we need to assess the risk, we need to mitigate the risk, we need to monitor the risk. It's same as usual as the on-premise environment, but we performing the same task for the cloud. When it comes to the concerns of information management and data security, the data security lifecycle management, how it would impact and how secure it would be on the cloud, and responsibilities and accountabilities are around data security. So determining who's responsible and who will be accountable for the security of the data stored in cloud. The basic recommendations what we have on it, we need to have the backups, we need to be ready with the business continuity plan or the disaster recovery, and also we need to be available, and we need to stick to the service level agreements as usual, and the protocols of actions and penalties in case of data breach. The in some term of data breach, if the software as a service, if the data is lost or if any of our data is stored on the customer's environment, cloud environment, you can easily blame the service provider and we can make the penalties placed on him. We can collect the necessary price. But if you just purchase infrastructure as a service, we are the person responsible for installing the operating system. We are responsible for maintaining the applications and data on it. So the responsibility plays more. So depending on the service we offer, the risk is higher. But anything is in everything can be minimalized on right monitoring. Even if there is a breach, when we are alert enough and we are ready and responsible, we can stop the breach or we can slow down the breach. During the initial stage, it is obviously any technology or any malware issue, it is immediately not possible to stop the breach. But the only thing what we can do is the slow down the spread. Once we slow down, we can slowly quarantine, or we have some time to plan. The contract wise is differs from service provider to service provider. The Excel sheet also gives you the point by point what are the things you need to take it into consideration, what are the complete risks. The risk assessment is separate team. They will be auditing anywhere it may be. They will be auditing, they'll be monitoring, they'll be assessing the risk, they'll be identifying the risk. That is a continuous process. That is not a one time. Even before choosing up a cloud security provider, we identify the risk, assessing the risk, and when we are implemented it has to be repeated. Any audit and any revision or any type of risk assessment will be continuous and continuously identified, continuously assessed, continuously mitigated. I mean, risk treatment is done, and also the monitoring will be done. There are four phases. So, any people who wanted to be a cybersecurity professional who are much into management oriented, if does not have security tools exposure, there are multiple CISA, the auditors, C risk, that is easy. The certified risk and information system control. That's a good certification we can go on. We can easily move into the governance, risk, and compliance team. The CSA gives you CCSK, Cloud Security Alliance. CCSK is examination. It provides multiple trainings, multiple sessions on the cloud. When you go to the CCSP, that's ISC Square. ISC Square gives CCSP. When you're done with the CCSK, you can go for CCSP. That's more technical and that's more advanced. Traditional security and business continuity recovery model. We obviously have a plan of business continuity and disaster recovery always in the plan. So there should not be any change when it comes to the cloud. Sometimes the cloud service provider might have a redundant site. They might have a DR site. The same set of data will be have a copy on a different data center on a different region, maybe within a single geographical tag. So DR wise, failover kind of thing will always provided by the cloud service provider. That should be always in place. And always we need to ensure that the CIA triad is implemented and there should not be any impact to the CIA in any worst case scenarios. The data should be confidentially maintained. The integrity of the data has to be protected and the availability of the data has to be always there. CCSP book, yes, that should suffice. The official study guide 4th edition, you can get the information from about CISSP, CCSP, SSCP, so everything from here. What is the beauty is CCSK and CCSP. CCSP is a combination of work or the development done by Cloud Security Alliance and as well as the ISC Square. The people who developed CCSK helped ISC Square in developing CCSP. So the foundation of CCSK help you to get CCSP easily. Effectively evaluation of the CSP data center architecture and operations. And how is the architecture is and how was the plan. When you check with the cloud security provider, they will give you multiple guidelines or complaint certificate what they offer. They should be having the proper DR plan in case of flood or natural disaster, how secure the data center is and how secure the physical entrance is. And even there is a possibility sometimes when we have a data center, we used to cool, we use multiple air conditioners, and there is possibility of always getting the water leakage or water drain from the drainage vent inside the data centers that cause electric short circuit or damage in the data center. So those things also would be mentioned on the evaluation sheet. Everything will be audited and that will be already done. The audit will be repeatedly happening on multiple premises of multiple data centers of every CSPs. So based on it, we can get a score. And obviously the name, as you say, Microsoft know that. Google, we all know that. And Amazon, we all know that. So based on the brand, we can also go for some trust, I mean reputation. Google Cloud actually is service. They are not completely in the service provider. They are actually pooling the service which they already offer for Gmail, YouTube, or any other Google apps. They have additional resource and additional data center. They are just sharing the resource pool, and we are renting it. So the cloud service provider to be demonstrating adopt of industry standard of best practices of data center architecture, setup and operation, cloud service provider to demonstrate appropriate BCP DR planner and evaluation tenant. So whatever we discuss, this has to be provided by the service provider and need to give us the complete clarification, and it is open to us. There is no way the service provider can restrict or deny that he will not share the information. And on the incident response, inadequate incident detection, response, alerting, and remediation is the key. Not only for the provider, it is even for us. Anywhere it may be cloud or on premise, we need to adequately identify any kind of incident. We need to detect the incident and we need to respond accordingly. We need the right alerting mechanism in place and also a plan to remediate or a predefined policy which are in place to take care of the occurred incident, and how smoothly and timely the secured incident information flow is operational, and how the CSP reacts and how the response and how we plan and how we respond, that also plays in the role. A proper conducting of threat modeling. Threat modeling, nothing but identifying, analyzing, and what are the ways the threat comes in, what are the threat actors, and how severe threat impact could be. So these are the thing has to be consideration, and also keeping high encryption standard for sensitive information or personal identified information, and also the data flow between a party to party. And the application security, as a application security we need to take care. When we go for a software as a service, most of the things will be taken care by the provider, but when we go for the platform as a service or infrastructure as a service, we need to take care of the security of underlying infrastructure as well as the operating system and also the applications running on it. It is clearly said more than 80% of the attacks, more than 80% of the breaches happening based on the application layer. The cause for it, misconfiguration or not patched vulnerability. Any software and every software which are developed, which are created, that cannot be get to the market without any bug or without known vulnerability, without anything. When we complete the functionality testing, the software functionality test, obviously there will be a security test, application security test will be conducted. It is open and the company will obviously know that there is a vulnerability, there is a bug. The vulnerability can be exploited, but depending on the severity of the vulnerability, the company will say go green, how fast the vulnerability can be fixed. But what happens when the same thing is discovered by a different external party, when it disclosed to general public? Obviously that's exploited. As long as the vulnerability stays secure and it's in, nobody knows it, as long as it stays as a 0 day or undisclosed to any public, it's safe. Encryption and key management, all the keys, the session management keys and session tokens and the keys are to be managed with the centralized key vault. Nowhere placing the data stored in a plain text. Always keep the data secure as encrypted text or a ciphertext, and keeping latest and updated algorithms and proper usage of key management system in securing the cloud infrastructure. Identity and access management, it is always essential to provide the right access to the right people on the right resource at the right time. So we need to ensure periodic audit. We need to provide only the limited access or the required access to anyone and everyone to the cloud infrastructure, not only for the application and also for the data. So virtualization is the core concept of cloud. The same thing we call in multiple terms or hypervisors or virtual images, anything. So heavily this technology is used, and when the underneath kernel goes bad or the overlying operating system is vulnerable. So what are the key recommendations? Hardening and regular security patching of virtualized operating system and hypervisors. Guest operating system and the hypervisor needs to be patched appropriately, and also to secure a separate hypervisor for our business, and strong access control of virtualized OS with physical access to bare metal hypervisors. We also have some new thing called bracket that was available, which helps the communication between the hypervisor and the operating system encrypted. The technology is implementing and grading. We need to make sure how to use and how to implement in it. Security as a service, cloud-based managed security services is not only available in cloud, it's available by multiple vendors and multiple structures. For example, Verizon offers a managed security services, which Symantec offers managed security services. The purpose of they'll be helping us in monitoring, managing the security appliances. They will also sometimes provide the virtual appliance, which are a security softwares that can be readily deployed on an environment. So, what is the recommendation? When we use a third party security as a service provider or a managed security service provider, sensitive data can be visible to third party. So any data can be monitored. What happens when a log entry is written and the log entry has a 16-digit credit card number along with the expiry date and the CVV number? If something happens, something accidentally, the log written in a clear text and that's visible, that's obviously a cause of breach. So they also need, not only they need software, they also need some appliance to be placed in our environment to make the service carried out. So there should be possibility of getting our infrastructure exposed to a third party, even though they are a security provider. Exposing our network, our infrastructure and softwares to other party maybe it still be risk. The company may be genuine, but the technician or the security consultant who works, we cannot rely how trustful the person would be. So that could also be a risk. What are the areas cloud attacks happening? The attack will happen at the data level, the data lift, the data encryption, the ransomware can even happen on the cloud application level attack, making some exploit or bug infused in it and making the application crash. Infrastructure level, we can breach into the network and provide network access level. And also we can attack directly on the cloud security provider. So any type of attack can happen in cloud. The data level security concerns and the attacks. So the integrity of the data. If the data gets corrupted, what is the cause? Availability, the denial of service will make the data will not be available at the time. Data login period, during the time you cannot move the data, you cannot take off from the data from the cloud service provider, and you'll be stuck in between. Data leftover. What happens when you leave, your contract ends and you leave the service provider and the data is still not deleted or not securely deleted? Obviously there is possibility of getting the data recovered, or it might be falling into your wrong hands. The data recovery options. What happens if accidentally some data is lost, and what are the possibilities of recovering the data back? And what is the safe failure point? What is the backup point? How frequently we back it up? And what is the security of securely storing the backups? Data location. This is related to the physical environment or physical data center location where exactly the data is located, and that too based on the regulatory or legal compliance. Application level, what other security we can do? We can use a malware and inject an attack on any working application and make it behave maliciously and make it crash. Cookie poisoning is simply will be manipulating the cookies, as like DNS and R poisoning. Cookie poisoning is simply adding some key strings or capturing the session keys, token values, or manipulating the token values or keys to make sure that the session inoperate or escalating the privilege or laterally move between multiple services. That can be done using the cookie poisoning. Backdoor debug option, hidden and manipulation fields. When a breach happens, when an attacker comes into the network, obviously it's easy for him to establish a backdoor so that anytime when he's wanted to come into the network, he does not need a permission or access or something to be granted for him. He got a backdoor. Keeping up a security on the front door and opening up the backyard open obviously makes no sense. And these hackers will be expert in deploying the backdoors. So anytime they can come in and go out. And even the data can be taken out using those backdoors. Infrastructure level attack, the same malwares, the ransomwares. What happens when it comes and crashes your environment and infrastructure? That's obviously a loss. OS level exploits, the remote code executions and the elevation of privileges. Those are simple attacks which can run on an operating system, not only on the guest virtual machine, it can be done directly on the cloud virtualization provider or even on the cloud infrastructure itself. The network level security, what happens when the man in the middle attack happens? No difference in cloud and infrastructure. Similarly, person who will be a bridge, any traffic between you and your cloud service provider will just pass through him here, and we having the complete visibility of what traffic between what if it flows. And it is also easy, sometimes easily decrypted or decoded, even the secure data. So that's why we insist please use the latest and updated ciphers and upgraded algorithms with the longer key string whenever and wherever required. Domain hijacking, simply when you type in google.com, instead of Google, it goes to googly.com. That happens. When a user types in my name, for example, my host name is testuser.google.com. This is the FQDN I enter into, log into my cloud service provider, I mean, a remote resource. When it defaces or when a domain gets hijacked, it will be redirected to a different zone, I mean, different resource. DOS attack is more common, denial of service, creating a single bot or bot network to attack on a single computer to stop the service or temporarily making the service unavailable. network safely grasping or gathering the information about the network, capturing the encrypted packets and try to decrypt it and identify what kind of technology they use, what kind of encryption standard they use, and what keys are. It is easy for them to. The sniffing is for identifying the network passwords or SSID decryptions. Those kind of attacks will be done. What is a cloud service provider level security? Guest hopping is nothing but tenant who's located along with us. He's trying to gain access to our environment through the existing cloud service provider's vulnerability. That's one of the thing happening. Malicious insider, maybe one of our employee. Our employee is not trusted. I mean, if he goes bad, things go wrong. So proper placement of identity and access management is the right key to make some block of these kind of malicious insider. Inter-VM side channel attacks. We already discussed about the side channel memory leakage of the Intel PC, Intel CPUs, wherein the attackers are easily able to extract the data from the computer, which are running in memory level. VirtualBox can be downloaded from virtualbox.org. You can use it to run guest operating systems on your computer. So we see both the demos here, VirtualBox and Acunitix, which is scanner. So I'm using a Windows operating system, so I'll be downloading the Windows host. So after downloading it, and double click and run on it. Next, you can click on all support. It is adds additional feature to existing VM support. In the meantime, let me also download Acunitix. I need to install. So when you log into it, it will take you to the page, and I should be receiving an email to my email to make sure that I'm the right person, just to ensure that the email is valid. VirtualBox, it's freeware which is provided by Oracle, wherein you can import readily available open virtual appliances, or you can use existing installation media, any ISO files to install your custom operating system. There are multiple sites which are provided by VirtualBox. You can download any operating system from older version like XP till 95, 98 version. Even still, the older version or operating systems are available as a VirtualBox appliance. Okay, the same as usual, I'll try to download it. Obviously, it will not work. This is a SHA-256 sum. The size of the file is 867 and the length of the string does not change, but the alphanumerically it changed. But we also can see 3 gigs of file size, but the length of the string does not change, but the value changes. This is called the hash value, SHA-256. So once we download it, post downloading, we can run the checksum and we can get the same exact hash value just to match it and make sure that we downloaded the same package and that was not tampered. So I'm downloading a VirtualBox 64-bit image. I think the demo was already done. I got the link from Acunetix, so we can download the demo. We download a trial, save. So we are running the Acunetix scanner. There are multiple websites hosted. So I'm logging in with the same email address which I gave during installation. There are web pages where you can test. For example, test.demofire.com, which was from IBM. We can use it for testing. This is similar like a banking website where we can try testing our hacking skills in it. This is a scan Acunitas web scanner. I used a site called demo.testfire.net. Demo.testfire.net is freely available. It is from IBM. This is the web page we use to training the product. IBM App Scan, IBM Web Inspect. So this is the web page we use to test. To have added it, there is in multiple options like scrolling, HTTP based data authentication general. For the demo purpose, I'm just adding the site and performing a scan. Previously, I was selecting the option SQL injection. Now I use cross-site scripting attack, and then I need the developer. Just executive summary is okay, just to let us know whether the site is vulnerable or not and how it cases. So I'm performing a scan. On the same site, vulnerabilities are added. So this was the site crawled by the scanner. These are the folders: admin, bank, images, PR. We can furthermore crawl into it. Look, ASMX files, CS files. These are openly available. So when we have access to these kind of files, sensitive information, these should not be disclosed to be. But for a demo purpose, it's readily available. Also, we can generate a report, executive summary, generate report. So I'm downloading as an HTML format as I don't have PDF viewer installed in it. How would the summary would look like? What is the site I scanned? What kind of summary I into? You can also download the executive report as a sample, and you can verify it on your computer when you have a PDF reader. Thank you.